Joining us as our newsmakers this week are Kate Carnell, who's the Executive Director of the Australian Food and Grocery Council, and Samah, Hadid, the 2010 Australian Youth Representative for the UN. Welcome to you both, and thanks very much for coming in today. Well, the decision to fast-track a decision about women being able to serve on the front lines was revealed this week. Let's first hear what the Prime Minister has to say.
A few years ago, I heard Peter Cosgrove say that men and women should have an equal right to fight and die for their country. I think he's right about that, and I think it's a good turn of phrase. It puts the choice very starkly. There are many Australian women who love their country. They want to be in the Defence Force. Of course, physical capability and intellectual capability has to be judged for every job. But if a woman has the physical capability and intellectual capability to do a particular job, then I do not believe it should be denied her on the basis of gender.
Well, that's the Prime Minister there. Kate Carnell, why shouldn't women serve?
Well, they should, and the Prime Minister was absolutely right. It's absolutely amazing we're still having that debate, aren't we?
It is amazing.
I mean, I'm absolutely amazed. I mean, most jobs in the Defence Forces are now available to women, but it's just been this last little bit, you know, the frontline service. But if women can meet the same physical requirements, mental requirements that men can, why would we have any other view?
What about the view, though, that officials in Afghanistan, for example, say female soldiers won't be welcome and, in fact, they might be targeted by the Taliban? What do you say to that?
Well, I'd say, they'd have to get over that. It's worked in other countries, and I don't see why we, cannot enforce this here. It's really rather unfortunate that it has taken us this long to realise that these roles should be given on the basis of physical and intellectual capability.
Why do you think there has been such a delay in getting this decision through?
Well, I think it reflects, unfortunately, a bigger problem within the military in regards to misogyny and chauvinism, and I think there needs to be a desperate cultural change within the military, and so I hope that within the discussion and the review that's being proposed that we address these underlying problems.
So what you're saying is that this is really in response to some of these scandals that we've seen of late involving sex and also the cadet at Duntroon?
I think that it's probably a response to that, but I think this was going to happen anyway. Now I think, 94% of jobs in the military are available to women. There are these last few that weren't. I think this has been an opportunity for the Prime Minister just to take this thing forward and to close that door which needed to be closed. We need to say all jobs are available based upon physical and mental capacity.
But there is also the issue of a high turnover rate of females in the military and a lot of females leaving the military, so we need to address those issues as well.
But is this going to change the culture, this alone?
Well, I think it's a start, and it's a step in the right direction, and it's going to take a long-term approach, clearly.
Okay. Well, the Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, says the Australian community is likely to support reforms aimed at curbing problem gambling, and a survey by one social group appears to back this up, with more than 60% of respondents backing compulsory betting limits. Let's listen to the President of Clubs Australia, Peter Newell, on how the gaming industry sees this.
This licence to punt treats everyday ordinary people who like to play the pokies like they are problem gamblers. This licence to punt is a multi-billion-dollar noose around the necks of the clubs and pubs to keep one bloke in Tasmania on side with the federal government.
Well, that's Peter Newell's view. Samah, Hadid, should there be restrictions on punters?
I believe there should be. There is an issue of problem gamblers, we know that. And the government's role here is to work in the interests of the most vulnerable in this situation. It is the problem gamblers. Whilst Clubs Australia and clubs and hotels will lose out in regards to these restrictions, I just feel that, a multi-million-dollar campaign that they've launched isn't in the interest of the public, and that the fact that we should continue with, the way these laws as it is, will not work in the interest of these most vulnerable.
Kate Carnell, do you share that view?
Look, if we're going to do this, and I can fully appreciate that we've got to do whatever we can to avoid the issue of problem gamblers, we shouldn't lose focus on the fact that clubs in our society do actually a whole lot of good stuff. We just got to have a look around Sydney, most capital cities. The clubs are doing a whole lot in junior sport, community services, and so on. So let's not sort of demonise the clubs, because they are a very important part of our society. So if we're going to do this, let's make sure it's done in a way that is not overly bureaucratic. Let's do it doesn't cost too much. There's no doubt problem gambling is a problem, but clubs are also a very important part of our social fabric in this country, and we've got to look after them.
What do you suggest to tackle the issue of problem gambling?
Well, I think that there is a positive to have some form of cap, particularly on people that have been identified as having an issue. We hear of those horrific stories of pensioners, of mums with little babies and so on coming and back gambling away the pension cheque. That's simply not acceptable. But quite generally, clubs form a very important part of our social fabric. It's the place that lots of families can afford to go to have dinner. They look after junior sport in whole areas of various cities. So let's make sure that whatever we do here isn't too intrusive or too expensive for them to actually put in place.
I wonder if you found that comment by Julia Gillard somewhat curious, that it's not an Australian value to profit from the misery of others.
Oh, well, I think that was a bit of an overstatement here. Look, all of us can see the good work that clubs do, and there is no doubt that clubs, do get an awful lot of their dollars to be able to produce that junior sport and so on from the poker machines. There's no doubt about that. There's also no doubt that the majority of people who lose money do it in a totally fun sort of a way. So we've got to focus on those few. We've got to have a system in place that doesn't badly affect the profitability of our clubs.
Do we need to question the wider issue of gambling and betting and not just clubs?
Well, it's a pretty wide thing in Australia, isn't it? Hey, there's the horses, and of course the casinos and a whole range of others, and the footy. In fact, we're Australians, we can bet on anything. So it's not to suggest that the clubs are the only place, but let's be fair, poker machines are a very quick way to lose a lot of money if you've got a problem. And so focusing on doing something in that space is not such a bad idea, but let's not lose the plot totally on the importance of clubs in our society.
Okay, well, Samah Hadid has recently returned from the Middle East, where she witnessed protests in Egypt, Syria and the Palestinian territories. Samah, what are some of the conclusions and hopes you have for the region after your visit?
Well, I'm very, very hopeful in regards to the young people that I came across and was able to interview. They're very much at the forefront of these protest movements, and they want change, positive change for their countries. I am fearful, however, in regards to the instability that exists in Egypt in particular. I witnessed, as you can see now, a very heavy crackdown on protesters launched by the army. So at the moment, there is a fear in Egypt of a counter-revolution that will be launched by the army, and there are constant clashes between military rule and the protesters and the people who want to go back to a normal sense of life in Egypt.
This is some of the vision that you yourself shot that we're seeing now. When exactly did you take this? So this was after the fall of Mubarak?
This was after the fall of Mubarak. It was after a celebratory rally that was held the day before, and the protesters defied the curfew into Hadid Square,
right,
and the army consequently launched an attack. The footage is rather bad quality because I was actually feeling quite faint from the tear gas that was launched. And at the moment that situation has subsided, but it is very much leading into a fear of a counter-revolution and clashes between the people and the military.
If I can bring Kate Carnell in here, I wonder what your thoughts are, particularly as we're seeing this operation over Libya, for example,
yes,
and Gaddafi is still around despite what NATO has said. What should happen? Do they need more force or less?
Look, isn't it a difficult one? Because the thing that's fantastic about this is that it is the people within countries like Egypt and Syria and Libya who are saying, no, look, we really want a different place to live in. We want more freedom. We want democracy. And that's how it should be. We don't want to see more foreign troops in these sort of places. We want it to be about the people themselves. But without some help, We've seen the problems in Libya. If there's not the air, the no-fly zones, if there's not the support, the local community just don't have a chance. So
and in Syria, at least 200 protesters have died so far. I mean, how many people do we allow to perish before there's some kind of action?
I think we have to take a level of responsibility, but we've got to do it inside what the local people are telling us they want.
Yeah, and the local people very much need support in this instance. In the case of Libya, for instance, there is a push for opposition forces to be armed, and the need.
So you think it's good to give them weapons?
I don't think it's good, but there is clearly a division within the NATO forces and the International Contact Group over whether or not to arm the opposition forces. But that would clearly be, a contravention of international law. So
Kate Carnell, very quickly. Yeah. Give them weapons?
Look, I think we have to support the people who are having uprisings within their countries that are looking for some democracy, looking for some reform. So if it means that we do have to provide some weapons, then I just don't think we can let these people be killed.
I just hope that is matched with humanitarian assistance, which is very much needed in all parts of the area.
Okay, well, we'll bring the discussion to a close there. Samah, Hadid, Kate Carnell, many thanks for coming in this morning.